Hello, everybody. Here we are again with the latest version of Dogcast. We've got a very special guest today. The big boss is Gary Hetherington. How are we doing, mate?
Yes, good, Brad. Pretty good. Strange times, isn't it? I'm not used to being holed up at home for as long as we have, but yeah, batting through.
Well, that's it. One of the good things about this pandemic is you're learning how to use technology. We've just had 5 minutes trying to set the iPod up, haven't we?
Well, we managed it and got there in the end, and I think that's been a story for me. Yeah, I think all my staff at work can tell you that I'm not the most proficient when it comes to IT, but I'm a big believer in it. And, we've invested hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds in it, but I'm still very much a pad and pen man.
Exactly. Can't beat the old school. So let's just go back to your playing days. If I get any of this wrong, blame Phil, because he's given me a lot of the information as I wasn't alive.
Oh, it is a long time ago.
Yeah, so you played over 300 games for Wakey, Wakey, York, Leeds and Huddersfield. Is that right?
Yeah.
And at the age of 27, you then formed Sheffield Eagles. That's a big ballsy move, really, at 27-year-olds to form a club. So what made you do that? I think you went on to play for them, manage them, a team manager them. Is that right?
Yeah, chief exec, player and coach.
Kicker, captain.
I never got the sack. I probably would have done if I had to been in all those positions, but yeah.
Yeah, surprised you was looking at captain sack you.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Brad, I enjoyed playing the game. I brought up in Castleford and, played from a very young age as boys in Castleford do. And I'm quite besotted with the game, to be honest. It was the only thing that was had any interest to me. So also my school days, playing rugby, and actually used to organise the school teams and everything that went with it. I was a fanatical Castleford supporter, never missed a match home or away for over 5 years. Rugby league was a big part of my growing up. And, my father was the manager at one of the local pits in Castleford. He never took me down the pit when I was just about 7 or 8 years of age. And all his brothers had worked down the pit. And actually, for lads growing up in Castleford, unless they were academic, which I wasn't, they were destined for life underground in the pits. And I said, I went down the shaft with my dad. He showed me round, and I thought, this is not for me. So I better get good at something because I'm not coming down here.
Yeah.
And actually, rugby league did offer a route out of that sort of job that we're going to be doing.
That lifestyle.
So I decided I want to be a professional rugby player, despite my lack of ability. And of course, ultimately, that's what I did. Although, of course, during my playing days, it was very different in that players were part-time, so we all had another job. And that was quite significant. Got paid for playing, but had another job. So I enjoyed my playing days. Started out at Wakefield Trinity, and as you said, quite a few years at York, and then Leeds, Huddersfield, and then eventually Sheffield Eagles. But Brad, as a player, I was unfulfilled. I always felt there was more to playing than actually we were. We were good that we're getting paid for it, but actually it was part social. It was an escapism from work actually, and it was terrific. But I always felt there was much more that could be done by clubs in terms of the way they were managed. Coaching was very much in its infancy, really. And I used to fall out with the clubs. I used to fall out with them. That's why I moved on to so many. Fall out with the coaches. Fall out. That must have been a nightmare. I would never employ somebody like I was nowadays. But yeah, I was unfulfilled in many respects, and that's what really I wanted to coach when I was 20 and manage. And but to be honest, I was never going to get a job, and that's what led me to starting a new club, which was the Sheffield Eagles.
Yeah, the few things that I've picked up on there is the fact that you said that your dad was managing a pit at the time. You're saying that you was managing school teams and stuff like that. So it's pretty clear that he was always destined to be managing clubs and teams and stuff like that. And obviously you went on to be pretty successful at Sheffield, starting up from nothing. I think your turnover at the start was 85 grand, and then you went into 1.4 million eventually, and you got promoted to the highest league at the time, and I think you had a highest position of 5th. So, talk about your mindset and the type of person you was at 27-year-old to create that and be successful. Have you got any advice to pass on to people?
Well, my advice to anybody would be don't do it, because it was quite misguided, to be honest. Full of enthusiasm, full of thought I knew everything, as people do at that age, and of course, looking back, it couldn't have been a more difficult challenge, because whilst I thought that Sheffield was a good place to put a club, quite close to the rugby league heartland, a big sporting city. The reality dawned soon on that there was actually no interest in rugby in Sheffield, neither union or league. It is very much a soccer city. So we've got to invent the game in many ways, and sort of introduce it into schools where we could, and actually get it into the sort of psyche of people in and around Sheffield and South Yorkshire, which was a really difficult challenge when our team was a poor one and with no money. Yeah. So those were the sort of challenges that we had right at the outset. But of course, looking back, invaluable lessons that you learn in life, but apart from anything else. And it was a terrific experience.
Yeah, so moving on, that's my next question really was, obviously you create this club from scratch. You'd imagine that you felt really passionate about it, but you've just spoke there that you realised that it wasn't meant to be. And that was my next question, is why move to Leeds and sell up in 1996?
Well, Sheffield was, for me, a 12-year journey, and we started with little chance of surviving, quite honestly. And you're right, turnover in that first year was just £84,000. So, in addition to being the chief exec and the player and actually coaching as well, I couldn't take a wage. I had to give up my job to do that. So I used to go out selling double glazing on the nights that we weren't training.
Yeah.
And selling double glazing in and around where I lived, which was the Pontefract area, Castleford, Pontefract, Featherstone, in the 1980s, at the height of the miners' strike, wasn't an easy challenge either. Yeah. So that's where you develop a variety of different skills, actually survival skills, in truth. And Sheffield really was all about survival in the first few years. But actually, we got together some really good quality young players, some good people, and it was a bit like a workers' cooperative. Actually, was the club, and just gradually built. And every season we improved, and we gradually got a better team, and indeed a better and bigger business, to such an extent that after 5 years, actually got promoted into the top division. And there's a lot of challenges along the way. Originally, the club was meant to start at Sheffield United at Bramall Lane, but it didn't. It ended up at Ollerton Dog Track, which was also an interesting challenge in itself. Yeah. Then eventually the Don Valley Stadium came on stream, and so Sheffield was a fascinating journey with a lot of success there. Created a lot of international players, quality players, some terrific people, but we did it without any money. Quite honestly, there was never any money invested into the business. So we had to just gradually build a business that grow, and then from the growth you could fund different players and facilities and so on. The move to Leeds was an interesting one. I think in my last season at Sheffield, which was the first Super League season, the season before that, the centenary season, I think we came about 5th in the competition, in the top competition. And to be honest, there wasn't a great deal more I could do, I believed, after 12 years. And the opportunity of Leeds came along, and quite bizarrely came along, really out of adversity. Because at the time, in the 1995, 96, the Leeds club was perilously close to going into administration. It had built up big debts. And the whole survival of the club was at stake, and they desperately needed new ownership. And that's really where me and Paul Caddick came together, had a really good look at it, and decided that it was a challenge that we'd both be keen to take.
Yeah, so out of all the clubs that we've mentioned that you've played for, that you've managed, that you've coached, I think I'm right in saying that none of them were Cass. So obviously that was your team when you was younger. How come you think it's never happened that you've been to Cass as a player, coach, or as a manager?
No, and as I said, when I was about 8 or 9, that's where I was always going to be, Castleford fan, and played for their for the districts, the school district sides growing up, and played for the Castleford under-17s, and I was destined to sign for Castleford, but I got seduced by Gary Cooper, who was the elder brother of what was to become my wife, Kath. And he, at the time, him and Neil Fox were the coaches at Wakefield Trinity. So actually, I signed for Wakefield Trinity whilst I was still at school. In fact, my first game for Wakefield Trinity was as a schoolboy, which at that time was illegal. So I had to play under an assumed name for Wakefield. So I actually joined Wakefield Trinity, much to the surprise of all my family and friends and everybody else. And you're right, since then, they never had an association with Castleford, but that's where all my early memories were. I always had an affection for the town and the club and the people of Castleford, of course. I think they've managed pretty well without me.
Yeah. Well, it's safe to say that you're pretty controversial then, because obviously you were brought up in Cass, ended up playing for Wakey, managed Leeds. I think Kath is from Featherstone, isn't she?
I know.
I don't think you'll have many fans in Cass left.
Well, no, so that's very much a mixed marriage. Castleford and Featherstone just don't go together at all. And there weren't many people predicted that marriage would last too long, but it has. And of course, what's helped, of course, is Kath herself was steeped in rugby league.
Yeah.
She was born and brought up in Featherstone. She's got 4 brothers. 3 of them were professional rugby league players, and her elder brother Gary was a Great Britain international and quite an iconic player. But apparently, people of Hetherington will tell you that Kath was the best player of them all. So she was steeped in rugby league, which certainly helped. Certainly helped in with our challenge at Sheffield in those early days, because there weren't many wives who would have actually put up with what we had to put up with, or what she had to put up with at the time. And at the time, Kath was pregnant with our 3rd child, so her sort of involvement was pretty limited at the outset. But of course, she ended up playing a major role in the growth of the club after that.
So the big question is you're from Cass, she's from Fev. So then where did you set down roots? Who won that battle?
Well, if you know the geography of where I live, I actually live in Pontefract, which is a town similar size to Castleford, which is nestled between Castleford and Featherstone. So that was a compromise. And,
I think that's the success to the relationship, is the compromise. And just
absolutely. Anything for a quiet life, Brad.
Yeah. Well, one of my questions was, what is your greatest memory in rugby league? And I might just probably focus a bit on what was the biggest achievement for you, the success that you've had at Leeds, obviously the golden generation, and turning it around from near administration, or such a big club with so much history, or the just creating something from nothing at Sheffield at such a young age and taking that big leap.
Yeah, and you're right. The 2 extremes. Sheffield had no history, no tradition, completely start-up club in a city that had quite honestly no interest in rugby league. Whereas Leeds are just the opposite, and that was the attraction of Leeds for me. I'd been here as a player. I got a feel for Headingley. Rugby league is and has been a real strong part of the city for 130 odd years. So much history, so much tradition, iconic stadium. Great potential. So the extremes were very evident, and that was the real challenge for Leeds. So look, I've been extremely lucky because I found rugby league. Some people find religion. I found rugby league at an early age, and so it's such a dominant part of my life, and it's given me so many benefits that I wouldn't have otherwise had. I don't know what I'd have done, quite honestly, without it. And so many great memories, and the greatest memories are not necessarily those of the major successes. It's actually seeing people develop and reach their full potential, and seeing a club and a business grow, and all the people within it working together, pulling together, coming up with solutions in times of challenge like we are now. That's a great thrill of being involved in the game, and not only at club level, but the game generally. I think the game's full of good people, and it's a unique game. It's probably different to any other. It's a game that was born out of the community and is still a product of its community. So I think, just being involved in the game in the way that I have, in the different capacities as well, from player to coach to manager to now to administrator, particularly to a big club like Leeds, and different roles I've had within the game as well, has been a great thrill for me, Brad. And it's difficult just picking out, individual instances.
Right, well, if it's difficult, we've got another difficult question for you. Is you've signed so many great players, obviously being at the club over the years, some of the players that Leeds have had. Who would you say is the best player that you've signed, and not necessarily just in rugby ability, the whole package in things that he brought to the club, or just helping in selling the club and just a good product to have working for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And once again, if I'd known about this question, I'd have put a bit of thought into it, because I'm sure there's people's names that I'll miss out. And that's, once again, that's a great thrill, bringing people to a club and seeing them, deliver what they're capable of delivering. And sometimes people don't, and that's a disappointment as well. So going back to Sheffield, the first signing was Darryl Powell, as an 18-year-old young player from Castleford, and he turned out to do a terrific job. He was captain, made him captain when he was 19. Did a great job, and then we sold him for £100,000 for him, so he had to go at one point.
Money talks.
Well, absolutely, and he did. That was survival, Brad. But it was a good move for Darryl as well. And then, of course, he was to come and join us at Leeds as a player, and then a bit later on as a coach. So as somebody who's certainly helped me along the way, Darryl Powell has got to be one of those people. And he's had such a terrific career, both as a player and indeed as a coach. So you'd have to put Darryl there. And there are so many at Sheffield as well. That players who become good players and very instrumental in the club. Some top class overseas players as well, who all came and did a terrific job for the club. People like Gary Jack and Bruce Maguire and Tuar and Nikau and others. And then Leeds, there's been so many, Brad. When we came to Leeds 25 years ago, the focus was on developing our own players, and then adding to it, quality players that we didn't have in our own system. So, going back all those years, Yestin Harris was an early signing, a big signing, and he made a difference at the time. And then over the years, we've said so many, haven't we? People like Keith Senior comes to mind. Keith, who I signed as an 18-year-old for Sheffield Eagles, came to Leeds and had an iconic career. Jamie Peacock, clearly, is his influence within the club and the team, and So apart from all the players that naturally came to our system, players that come from other clubs and players from overseas as well. We've had some terrific overseas players at Leeds, Danny Medeiros, Brent Webb, Balilala Titi. And going back in the early days as well, when we weren't that successful, people like Mark Glanville, who came and joined us, Matt Adamson, who played for the club, all give terrific service, become great Leeds loiners as well. Leeds Rhinos, in many respects, they bought into the culture of the club, the organisation and the team, and actually delivered so much value. So we've been blessed, Brad. We've had a few mistakes as well along the way, but that's inevitable. But no, I think a great sense of pride for me is when I go back to Australia or come up again across players who I've not seen for 10 or 20 or even 30 years in some cases, just the sort of fond memories and the friendships that you make as well.
I'll not ask you some of the bad mistakes. We'll save that headline. We'll not put you under that much pressure. So a question that I like to ask, and being from Wigan, you and around the amateur clubs, you sit and listen to so many legends of Wigan speak about the game, and they are quite disrespectful about the standard. I know this is a topic at the minute, is what's the standard like, and the game's changed so much to back when they was playing. I asked this question to Barry McDermott because he bridged that gap from basically winter rugby to professional at Super League. And you're a good person to ask on it because you've been involved in the game ever since them early days, and you're still involved in it now. So it's not as if you're a fan watching the game; you're still involved in the daily running of a club. So what would you say to the standard now compared to, let's say, 20, 30 years ago, when you had those famous Wigan teams that were dominating? And What's your?
Well, it's an interesting question, Brad. And those same people who you were talking to at Wigan, that if they'd have sat in a room 30 years ago, the people they'd been talking to would have been saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think right through the game's history, people has always said it's different to how it used to be. And of course it is, because the game evolves and changes. And I think the evolution of the game has probably been greater over the last 20 years than it has at any previous time. So inevitably the game changes. It is a much better game, a much better sport now than it was when I played it, in my opinion. However, having said that, there's a lot of skills that's been lost. And a lot of the things that spectators like to see has been lost as well. So it's not all benefits and progress, but that's life. Life moves on. Technology's taken a great part in the sport. When I played, there were the coaches didn't have any influence. The best teams have got the best players, and the best players actually organised themselves. And they practice moves, and they worked out how to beat the opposition and how to break defences. And that's what players nowadays. Actually, players have all that done for them. They're now instructed, aren't they? That's the reality. So look, the game's changed. It's a much better game. It's a much better product now, in my opinion. But it is different. It's different, and of course, society is different. When I was growing up, the only form of entertainment, really, if you lived in Castleford, was to go and watch Castleford.
Yeah.
Or maybe to go to the cinema. Nowadays, it's just so different for youngsters, for older people, for everybody. But I think and with the sport, we played on heavy pitches throughout the winter months, and were part-time rather than full-time. So it's very different. But that's not to say that the great players of yesteryear would be great players today.
Yeah.
Back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, so many iconic players, they'd be legends today, and there's no question about that. And just like the good players of today would have been good players in the past as well. But yeah, it's a changed game, significantly changed. It's changed for the better. It was a much more brutal game then. Of course, we didn't have video refs. Touches just didn't have much of a role to play. And, most teams' defensive tactics was about getting shut of the other team's best player. Yeah. So this, how players survived, good players, how they survived, I'll never know, because they were targeted every week. And halfbacks, quality player, people like John Holmes, who's often talked about at Leeds, played 600 odd games, did John, and every game he was targeted. He took high shots and he took off the ball shots, and he came through it all. And so did people like Alan Hardesty and Alex Murphy and Roger Millward, who were no bigger than Rob Burrow, but every week got targeted, but came out of it blitzing teams and making other players look fools. So a fascinating game, but different. And I would say today, the product of what we've got today still needs to improve and still can improve, but it's as good as it's been.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you on that. And obviously I wasn't around then, but the way I look back on those games, and I think it's as simple as you put the great players or the players from 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years in the environment that we've got now. I think they'd just be as successful and just be as good as they was. I think the difference is the game has moved on, like you're saying, and it's become more of a professional, more educated, really, and it's harder to create that space. So it looked a bit better 20 years ago because it was a lot easier to find space because the defensive systems probably weren't as sophisticated as they are now. That doesn't mean you put the likes of Andy Gregory and Martin Fire in a game in this environment. I'm sure they could still do the things that they was doing. I just think it's difficult to compare two games from two totally different times. I'm glad we touched on that one. We'll move on to a bit more current times, and not some of the legends that you like talking about, like John Holmes and stuff like that. How have you been dealing with lockdown? Obviously, it's you and Kath now. The kids are all grown up and stuff like that. A lot of people are on furlough and have found it hard to find things to do. I would imagine that you've been really busy trying to keep Leeds going. And how close or how down to the bone has it been for survival, really, and how bad has this pandemic been for us?
Well, unprecedented, Brad, for everybody who's alive. Nobody's ever seen anything like this or witnessed or experienced anything like this. So we've nothing to fall back on, no experiences to fall back on to say, well, this is how we managed last time. totally unprecedented and very, very difficult for anybody with a business, and particularly a sports business. For me personally, I'm one of the few at our club that is not on furlough. So I've been extremely busy, but busy at home, of course, going to Headingley occasionally, but it's all closed down effectively. But I've been busy mainly with conference calls. So there's a lot going on with Super League, a lot behind the scenes in terms of fixture planning and working out different scenarios based on what might or what might not be. The salary cap has been an issue, and a whole range of other things. The whole protocols about people coming back to work, players returning to training, etc. There's a lot going on, so that's kept me really busy, and I've got a variety of other things as well within both Super League and the Rhinos. So I've been busy, but busy from home, and I've never been one to stay at home during the day or even on an evening. We go out most evenings, and it's been just a strange existence. But we've now got grandchildren, so it's good to be able to spend some time with them as well. And it's been a really, really tough time for all and everybody, and particularly for Rugby League, because all our clubs, both Super League and Championship clubs, all their income is effectively dried up. Furlough has been a godsend. Now, I think the actions of the players and the staff in taking the salary cuts that they have throughout all the games has been exemplary. And I don't think Rugby League as a sport has come out, has actually been recognised for what it's done, because, you've seen where other players in other sports are squabbling over whether they should take deferred wages or reduced wages or whatever. Rugby League's been exemplary in the way that we've everybody's pulled together, done their bit, and I think we've got an attitude that we'll do whatever it takes to actually come through, survive, and ultimately prosper. But of course, this is not just a short-term problem. It's going to go right throughout into 2021 and maybe beyond. Who knows? But I do think we've passed the high point. We're now relaxing lockdown, which is great. As long as we don't get a second spike, I think we can look forward to resume training and resume playing as well. Initially, it will be in empty stadiums, which will be a challenge in itself. But ultimately, for our fans to come back and watch the team and support the team. And one of the benefits it's given me is the ability to actually spend some time phoning our fans, some of our volunteers have been doing that, and I've had the job of phoning our old age pensioners, people of a similar age to myself, and it's been fascinating, those conversations, just listening and how the passion that actually exists amongst our senior fans, and how quickly they want to resume coming back to Headingley and watching the team play.
Yeah, and the way you speak about this, and it's difficult for everyone. It's difficult for you as managing it. It's difficult for Paul owning it, us as players, fans. I think everyone's going to feel the pinch at some point of how it's affecting them. And I think that's what in the end will makes Leeds or make rugby a great place to be around, because everyone mucking in together and everyone dealing with those pinches together then creates being a part of something, which is more than just a rugby league team. Now, if we all just went and throw our dummy out the pram and went, right, I'm not having this, then even if we did have the product and the rugby on the field, it won't be as good as it will be later on, because you've not all been a part of it.
No, that's absolutely. I couldn't put it better myself, Brad. And you're right. And I think that's, I talked a bit earlier about rugby league being a bit different to most other sports. And that actually is what sets rugby league apart, I think. There's such a communal spirit. Whether you're a player or a coach or a fan or an administrator or a sponsor, there is a buy-in. I think there is a genuine bonding with everybody involved in the game. And even though fans are fans of their own club, they're also fans of the game, which is not always the case in other sports. So I think that's a great strength that Rugby League's got. And in times of need, like we are now, that's where you rely on those strengths. And I think as a game, we'll all come through it. I mean, some clubs are vulnerable. There's no question about that, and we need to be able to help every club to be able to come through this challenge. And then I think we can look forward to a very, very bright future going forward.
Yeah, and we mentioned the effect that the pandemic's had on Leeds as a club, and going into it, my first thoughts, I think, like anyone's, it was only going to be a couple of weeks, and also that naivety I took into wages and how it affect club. I thought, well, I'm at Leeds Rhinos, one of the biggest clubs, one of the most wealthiest clubs. I'll be fine. It shouldn't really affect me. And then later on, we had the dreaded email off you that was getting pay cuts. But can you explain to us why this pandemic has probably affected us as a club a lot more than it would some of the smaller clubs?
When you're right, but we've got the biggest problem because normally, if you're the biggest club, and you've got the biggest support base, and you've got the best facilities, and you've got this, that, and the other, that gives you an advantage, and that does give Leeds Rhinos an advantage over other clubs and competitors in Super League. But this problem has given us the biggest challenge because we've got all sorts of different income streams. We've got a big conference and banqueting business. We've got catering and food and drink actually is a big part. We've got a hotel. Our retail business is a large. So all these income streams, they've all dried up. So if you're very reliant on all those, then obviously you feel the pinch. If you're less reliant on those because you may not have those income streams, then you don't have as big a problem.
Yeah.
That's where we've been at a disadvantage. I mean, it's survival for all clubs, and every club has got to do whatever it needs to do to get through it. So everything was going. We just invested all our cash reserves into the new facilities.
Yeah.
So things were going okay for us. This was always going to be a tough year for us anyway. On the back of that. But of course, everything came to a halt in March. And like you, I never foresaw that this was going to be such a long-term problem. I thought, maybe a couple of months, and then by June, July, we'll be up and running again. And of course, that is not the case. And even up and running again is going to be up and running differently.
Yeah.
And we don't all quite know what the new normal is going to be. So it's so challenging. And as I say, for a club like us and a business like us, it gives us extra challenges.
So moving forward from now, how far would you say we're off a date of actually knowing? So not actually a date when we're going to play, but how far do you reckon we're off knowing when we can start resuming? And it's the difficulty is the balancing of the furlough and the getting us back playing, because obviously as soon as we get back playing, we're going to be behind closed doors. It's going to take us off furlough, but we're still losing that income too.
That's right, Brad. But I think fundamentally everybody in the game wants to get back playing. Certainly Super League, albeit behind closed doors. But Sky have been terrific in their support for the game, so we need to be able to be back playing on television. And I think and the answer to your question is nobody knows.
Yeah.
But and we have to be led by government. But things are happening. Things are developing. And we now know that soccer is going to be playing again soon, next week, I think. Rugby Union are going to be up and running again by the middle of August. So, I think Rugby League is targeted to be back playing again, Super League, in August.
Yeah.
That is the target, which means that we need to be training in July, next month. Yeah. And then the big hope is how quickly can we play in front of crowds? Nobody knows. We're speculating that it could be October, but we don't quite know what those crowds will be. I don't think it'll be full crowds, so things are developing at a pace now.
Yeah.
Rugby League, like all sports, has been led by government. What's safe to do, and so on. There are some heavy costs in testing and getting safe environments. But Rugby League will have to, and clubs will have to suffer those because we all want to get back playing as soon as we can.
Yeah. So what will that look like, Gary, with us getting back and playing and it being safe? Is there some sort of idea what we'll have to be doing to be going into work each day, or to be going to games and making sure that we've not got COVID? Is there anything in place yet?
Yeah, all those protocols are all been dealt with by the government effectively, and the RFL. And so, it's all been led by the scientists. So no team or no sport can just decide when it itself will get up and running.
Yeah.
It'll be done through the government and by complying with all the various protocols which will be put in place.
Yeah. Just the last question it's just about the players' union, and you was obviously the guy that set the first ever players' union up in the 80s, I think, and we had a movement last week, I think it was, where we all came out and showed that we were standing together finally. I think it's been crying out for a long time. How important do you think it is that as players, I know it might make your life a bit more difficult, but how important is it for us as players to have that voice?
I've always been, players generally are apathetic, and have always been. And there was a players' union back in the 1950s, apparently, but that didn't last long. You're right, I was chairman of the Rugby League Players Association that got formed in the early 80s. And we did a really interesting thing by linking with the trade union, the Apex trade union. And this was in the 80s. This was in the days where trade unionism was at its height.
Yeah.
Arthur Scargill and the miners' strike and so on. So it was really big news. So for Rugby League to be creating a players' union was big news at the time. And our issues were things like insurance. At the time, players had another job. If they got injured playing rugby, it might prevent them earning money at the work. So insurance was a big issue that the game had not dealt with adequately. Medical protocols, freedom of contracts. Then players signed to a club, they were at that club for life. There were no such thing as contracts then. So we were looking to introduce contracts at the time. So the whole range of issues, and it was all really for the good of the game, but we were seen as revolutionaries. And that's actually what led to me starting Sheffield Eagles, because I was never going to get a job with any other club, having been chairman of the Players' Union.
Yeah.
But it was a good movement at the time, and it delivered quite a lot of benefits for players in a relatively short space of time. So I've always been in favour of players having a voice. Of course, they should have a voice, in particularly how the game can progress. And the GMB trade union have got involved now, and with my role at Super League, I've been having discussions with them as well. They understand the challenges of the game. It's important that they understand have a good feel of the problems that clubs are going through as well. And so I think it is important that players, their biggest asset is, of course, what they do on the field. But they're all passionate about the game. They need to have a voice. They need to have an influence on the way that we progress the game. And they have to be honest, but without being particularly well organised. So I'm all in favour of that, and I'll do whatever I can to strengthen it.
Right, I think that's all the areas touched. I've had an hour of your time, so thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate it, being honest, and get yourself off and get on these conference calls. Get some rugby back, eh?
Thanks, Brad.
Cheers, mate. Thanks a lot.